Happy holidays from the Florida Squeeze. This is Carter Krishnaiyer. Uh, I love what so many of the people on highway YouTube, U.S. highway and interstate highway YouTube do. And Control City Freak is one of my favorite YouTube channels, period, whether it's about history or politics um, or highways, right? You know, the things I tend to gravitate to YouTube for, or stuff about corporations and companies. Those are the things I watch on YouTube. Um, but interestingly enough, I have a bone to pick not only with Control City Freak, but with everybody else who seems to do highway YouTubes about one thing, just one thing, which is Lake City as a control city. Um, and I think this is a very Florida perspective and a very old Florida perspective. So I let me preface everything by saying that. I think newer residents to the state or people who come and go, live here part of the year, whatever, may not have the same appreciation for Lake City as the, quote, crossroads of Florida, unquote, that I do. But Lake City was in the earlier incarnations of the state, the historic incarnations of this state, when the state was a much more southern state, where the population was much more centered around the area of Middle Florida, as it was called then. And Lake City was kind of the crossover city from Middle Florida to East Florida, if you will. It was the original home of the University of Florida, which moved to Gainesville. Lake City was where railroad lines initially met, right? We had a railroad. The first railroad in the state went from Fernandina to Cedar Key. So that railroad line did not go through Lake City. But then when a railroad line was built west to connect to Pensacola, and the railroad was built south from Atlanta and even over into Jacksonville, these lines met in Lake City. Then the U.S. highway system came. And in 1900, 1910, when Florida was a very rural state, still Lake City was one of the largest cities in the state. It wasn't as big as the established three largest cities, which were Jacksonville, Pensacola, and actually Key West. That's a whole nother story, right? Why Key West was for much of the period before the Florida land boom, one of the largest cities in the state, population-wise. In fact, in 1890, it was the largest city, got overtaken by Jacksonville by 1900. But Key West was always a very large and important place from the time of statehood onward, believe it or not. But taking Key West out of it, Lake City was strategically placed on the route between Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, and Pensacola. Tallahassee, of course, was the capital. It was halfway between those kind of East Florida locations. St. Augustine was booming in the 1880s and 1890s thanks to Henry Flagler's railroad and Henry Flagler's investment in the Ponce de Leon Hotel, which is now Flagler College, and all of the other buildings that were built then. Lake City was kind of a very important stopping point, like those sorts of places in western states now, like the frontier, the legacy of the frontier days. Florida was very much a frontier area, even though it wasn't in the West. U.S. highways come, and the primary U.S. highways that are punched through Florida are U.S. Highway 1 and U.S. Highway 41 that are punched down the peninsula, right? And then you have some other primary but not major U.S. highways, or U.S. 27, which was built through the state, eventually U.S. 19, which was built down to St. Petersburg. And then you had one primary U.S. highway that came across the state. U.S. Highway 90 and U.S. Highway 1 meet in Jacksonville, which was the largest city in Florida at the time. U.S. Highway 1 and U.S. U.S. Highway 41, which made its way up towards the Midwest and Chicago, Milwaukee eventually. U.S. Highway 41 and U.S. Highway 90 met and still meet today in Lake City. Then you have the interstates built, and there were three primary interstate highways that are built through Florida: I-10, I-75, and I-95. I-10 ends at I-95 in Jacksonville, and then ends on the other end in Santa Monica, right? It's a cross-country interstate. Where it meets I-75, which is one of the other primary interstates, north-south interstates that end in 5 are primary interstates. East-west highways that end in 0 are primary interstates. Just like U.S. highways, I should have explained this. U.S. highways that end in 1, U.S. 1, 11, 21, 31, 41. Those are primary north-south U.S. highways. U.S. highways that end in 0, U.S. 10, U.S. 50, U.S. 90. Those are primary east-west U.S. highways. So that's why 41 and 90 meet in Lake City. I-10 and I-75 meet in Lake City. Just like the railways met, just like the U.S. highways met, two primary interstates in the U.S. interstate system. Two of the, I guess if we count like 2 of the 15 or 16 primary interstate highways in the entire system meet just outside Lake City. That is why Lake City is a control city. That's why it will always be a control city. That's why it always should be a control city. Are Ocala and Gainesville much bigger places? Yes. Although I guess Ocala is kind of a control city. I think it's a control city on the Florida Turnpike more than it is on I-75, because the Florida Turnpike doesn't make it to Ocala. But sometime in the 1990s, Wildwood, which was the control city, which is a tiny place, was changed to Ocala because Ocala was the largest city close to where the Turnpike meets I-75. Gainesville and Ocala are much more important places today. Ocala is booming. Marion County is booming. Gainesville, of course, is the home of the University of Florida. But there is a reason why Lake City is the control city. Now, where I do agree with the YouTubers that analyze control cities is on I-75 and the use of Naples instead of Fort Myers. That to me is still a very bizarre one. That's a strange one. I don't understand, but that's a topic maybe for another day. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate or don't celebrate. Have a great, safe, and joyous holiday season from the Florida Squeeze.